Hi there, I'm Dani Henderson. My guest today is the one and only Shaun Attwood. He was arrested and he was jailed and he was done for selling drugs. Yes, he was. Did you know that? A lot of you didn't. A lot of you see this well-dressed, beautiful, perfect British English gentleman, but there is a lot more behind the great man with a massive, massive ability of courage and strength. And wait until you hear his true life story. Shaun Attwood, my friend, welcome, sir.
Thank you for the lovely introduction.
We were just saying it's been over a couple of years that we've been actually trying to get this done, like get you on the channel so we can share your story.
Indeed. And I've had a baby since then, and a lot's happened. Yes, it alters your life path a little bit.
Apparently. Yes, it does indeed. Well, sure, let's start with where you grew up and what you actually came out of school with in terms of qualifications, because that's actually quite important to your story.
Yeah, so I went to, it was called St. Joseph's High in Widnes, Cheshire, and I did the O levels. I was fascinated by economics. My economics teachers used to give me classes of my own. And then I went on to do A level maths, physics, economics, special level economics, and business studies at Liverpool University. So I was all about finance, numbers, soulless. I was reading George Soros back then and watching Gordon Gekko and that movie Wall Street, Greed is Good. And I was getting indoctrinated into the world of the banksters and the stockbrokers, and that was my motto, if I don't become a millionaire by 30, I'm going to kill myself.
That's quite wild, quite wild. And a real motivation point in life, wasn't it? It really motivated you. It was a real driver for you. But when you actually graduated university, you did come out with a full degree, didn't you?
Yeah, I was coming down off the disco biscuits after raving all weekend, and I remember sitting my finals, and there was like beep, 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 beep going off in my head as I'm doing my exams. But I managed to get through that, and then I moved to Arizona and worked in the stock market a la Wolf of Wall Street.
So how did that actually come about? Because you don't just tend to get out of college, get your degree, and then suddenly end up in Arizona as the Wolf of Wall Street. How did that transition actually happen?
So I had a couple of aunts in Arizona, one of whom changed my date of birth in my passport when I was 16 and took me out nightclubbing in Arizona and was introducing me to all these beautiful American women as Paul McCartney's nephew. So, could you imagine just a normal lad from a little chemical manufacturing town? Suddenly you're in America, they hear the accent, they think you're Paul McCartney's nephew, all the attention you're getting. I'm thinking, right, when I finish at university, I want some of that. So that's what I did.
Wow, wow. Is it fair to say your aunt was a bit of a villain? Just
My
kidding.
aunt said, just jump on a plane, come out here, you'll get a job real easy with English accent. And if they ask for a work visa, we will go to the printing shop, we will get a printing set, and we will stamp H1B1 work visa into your passport.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Of course, you wouldn't get away with it now, but how fun that you did back in the day, as a way to step forward. So how old are you? Your first time in America after you've graduated?
Yeah, so finished at university early 20s.
hmm So that's a long time into education from school to university. So let's talk about the in-between and the disco world and the rave world, because that was a massive influence on you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I just raved my ass off basically. I had social anxiety and I almost got beat to death by some drunks when I went to fill up my mum's little red car with some petrol. These big guys, rugby player size, started to behave abusively towards me. One had an iron bar. They got me on the floor, smashing me in the head, kicking me in the head. Left me unconscious. That's why I got these veneers on my teeth. They knocked pieces of my teeth out. But after that, my social anxiety was compounded. I wouldn't dance, wouldn't talk to women, wouldn't talk to strangers. And when the rave scene began, I wouldn't stop dancing all night long, wouldn't stop talking to people all night long, hugging people I didn't even know, telling them my life story. And raving became my religion. So I pledged that when I went to America and made all this money from these, materialistic goals that I had, I was going to transfer that rave scene from the UK over to Arizona, to the Sonoran Desert, and that's what I did. But they didn't have the ecstasy, so I went to work on that side of it as well, which is what led to the SWAT team coming.
So let's take another step back to your best friend in the world, Wildman, as you've called him, and you brought him into into the lives of many of us that watch you. I remember watching you after he recently passed on the Geordie podcast, and it was made me cry. I'm sure everyone that watched it cried. You know, your love for your best friend was you could feel it on screen when the two of you did your videos. It was something quite beautiful. Do share with us the beloved Wildman for those that have never heard of him.
All right, so Wildman grew really big in school, and the teachers got scared of him, so they had him outside raking leaves as the caretaker. He would pick teachers up and put them in dumpster bins and stuff. Yeah, so me, Wildman, and Wildman's cousin Hammy, we would go to a tree at the top of Widnes in Pexhill Quarry. We called it the thinking tree. And Hammy would be like, what do you guys want to do when you grow up? And Wildman would say he's got red dots in his head telling him to hurt people, and he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. And then Hammy would say to me, what are you going to do? And I'd say, I'm going to go to America, make $1 million in the stock market, fly you guys over. And don't worry, Peter, as in Wildman, you're not going to go to prison because I'm going to get you a job as a wrestler, and you're going to fight Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan and all these guys. So I thought idealistically I could transform his aggressive energy into something that would be successful for him, but it didn't quite work out like that. But he did go off to prison, and I did go off to America, and a lot of it came true.
It's amazing, amazing. It's interesting that he mentioned as a young child or a young boy that he had red dots and something with him was telling him he was going to hurt people. Do you think he had well, you would know, a rough, hard, violent childhood growing up, and his environment dictated some of the behaviors that we saw?
This is the thing. He's got 3 brothers, and they're all completely normal, like banks, IT guys, tech, married with kids. So I've had to contemplate this myself. And when you look at nature versus nurture, I think there's something that we can be born with that can get triggered. In his case, he cited his oldest brother beating him up a lot when he was a kid. And I've also thought about the purpose of people like Wildman. They call him a psychopath in this day and age, but if you go back hundreds of years, if the Vikings were coming to your village, he'd be the first one to jump up and be saving people's lives and killing these Vikings. So it's complex.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing I forgot to tell you, about 2 or 3 months ago, I did the plant from Peru. And all my dead friends came and spoke to me. Now, I've thought about them over the years individually, but it's almost as if this plant opened a portal because my brain thinks this is real to this day. What happened? It's like they were all having a group conversation with me, and Wildman was leading the conversation and laughing the most. They were all laughing together because most of my party friends are dead, the male ones, and they said they were proud of me for still being alive and having a family and having Jen and baby Ziggy and all this stuff. And it was great. This plant thing, the process lasted 3 days, but that was on the highlights of it.
So you had a beautiful experience where you were able to connect with Wildman and other friends who have crossed into the spiritual realm or the heavenly realm. What was that like? What did it look like? What did it feel like?
It just gives me goosebumps thinking about it because the whole experience was intense to the point where I didn't even know who I was. I was just breath at one point. I just kept reminding myself to keep breathing. And then you go into, you're going through these coloured, it's hard to describe what you're going through. Just, it's like Big Dipper, colour Big Dipper of multiple colours. You're going through all this. You're trying to put the brakes on it by opening your eyes, and eventually you can't put the brakes on it, and you're just gone. And then they came to me, and it was a lovely thing to connect with them after all that time. I mean, Wildman passed between 2 to 3 years ago, but there's about a dozen of them, my closest friends, who were partying with me in America, have passed. And to see them all happy together, collectively having a conversation and everybody reacting to everybody else. Can you imagine that? Like, I thought I would never be in a room with these people again, but there I was. Sometimes people say to me, Shaun, are you nostalgic? Do you look back and do you miss these times? And I say it was like, yeah, it was, I had a wonderful time, but I look back at it as a phase I went through in my life. It's kind of surreal to think about it. And I miss these people, but I'd written off my ability to be sat in a room with them, and they're all talking to me. That was incredible to me.
Yeah, yeah. And life is incredible. And there are so many layers and levels. And as you know, at this time on the planet, this literally is a spiritual war. We're seeing evil against good. We're seeing, like on your channel, so much the diddies, the child harmers, the adult harmers, those who have done deals with the devil, those that switch out the human vessel to play with the demonic energy, which gives them power, which creates other darker elements. And then above that, there's always been a connection to off-world elements, which we won't go deeply into. However, like I was saying on your channel, you are one with the courage to start layering all of this in. And the discovery for you, I think for most people, if we see it, then we can believe it. If we experience it ourselves, then we can really be passionate and hold voice to the truth that we know to be true, while others are programmed and educated and groomed to be skeptical and laugh and mock. So no one can take from you that beautiful experience that you had. And Wildman was a bit of a beacon to many people, and again, an example of a good soul who would stand and fight and defend. And yet it's a very complex personality, you could say in part disorder. But I'm really happy that you brought him into the frame. Some of us got to see him because I know he was very important to you. Okay, let's go to Arizona, where you were being the king of rave and you're bringing the whole rave model to the States and you're getting ecstasy pills. Where are you getting your pills from?
Started out just getting them locally, and then through LA, and then from Amsterdam.
Okay, how easy was that? Was it friends you sent overseas? Were they people in England, contacts you already had?
So it took many years to develop this, and I couldn't leave America because I was an illegal alien the whole time I was there. Didn't have that work visa or anything. I sent people to Holland with testing kits from a website called Dance Safe, and a pill should be 100, milligrams of the good stuff, and it turns the color in this kit like purple blue. So we would know we were getting the good stuff, and I had a reputation for the good stuff. And that's how it started. And in the beginning, the smugglers would just bring back samples, and then we started to mail them back in like hollowed out stock market annual reports using edible glue. And then we started to progress to moving more. The most we moved in one shipment was 40,000. And this was prior to 9/11. So back then, people could put them in pillowcases, or if they wanted to be more secure, into computer towers, screwed into computer towers. And we weren't flying them directly into America, we were flying them into Mexico.
That is crazy. And again, how easy back in the day. We see a lot of stories about the Mexican cartel and how they smuggle things in, China dolls, etc. And I know things are much tighter now, but goodness me, what a journey, what a story. Okay, so tell us the nickname that you had by being this rave king from London.
Well, when I used to show up at the raves, like South Central Phoenix, in these neighborhoods with gangbangers and drive-by shootings, a lot of homeless people, a lot of people doing crack. I would pull up in like a twin turbo Mazda RX-7 with like a Bose surround sound system blasting this German techno. And the raver kids would gather around and be like, they start asking me questions. They'd hear the English accent. They were really friendly. They were on the disco biscuits themselves. And they started to call me the Bank of England. And they asked me to invest into their ideas. And that's how it began, the genesis of putting money into rave parties.
That's incredible. It's funny though, isn't it? In England, the way that the Brits are kind of programmed, if you rocked up in a fancy car playing dead loud music, they'd be like, wanker, wouldn't they? British. So when I first moved to San Diego with my ex-husband, we went down to the harbor in Coronado, an island off San Diego. It's actually where Wallace Simpson and King Edward also abdicated. They had a house there, and half that island is a big nuclear military base. Yeah. Anyway, so we went for the first time. It was Christmas. We go down to the bay. And all the local millionaires are like parading their yachts around the harbor, right? And then one goes by and it's got a helicopter on the back of it. My ex-husband, he's British, and he went, if we were in England right now, somebody would petrol bomb that.
Ego is the enemy.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, it's not funny. People shouldn't trash other people, but just the difference in our kind of, culture. Okay, so you were approached to create this kind of mini drug cartel, let's call it that. So did you get tight with these people? And you said there was a German link there. They were Germans. Germans.
No, so we were getting them from Holland, and then we would get the train over to France, and then Air France to Mexico City. Mexico City, they would fly to Hermosillo near California, and then they would come down to Puerto Penasco, Rocky Point, at which point we would change the smugglers over to, like, we had vehicles, ASU, Arizona State University, diving tanks, all kinds of tourist bric-a-brac. And if it was spring break, there was a lot of people crossing the border around those times. They were ideal to smuggle over the Mexico to the Arizona border.
That is wild, absolutely wild. Goodness me. And so how many years were you running this profitable kind of ecstasy environment?
So it went from 97, SWAT team came May 16th, 2002, but I'd actually quit the importation a year before I got caught. I thought I got away with it, but they don't have to catch you with the drugs. All they got to do is find someone from your past to tell them they've done a deal with you and they've got you.
And what proof did that person have?
There was 10 people which gave statements which enabled a grand jury indictment.
How rude of them. So tell us, you're gonna have a bit of a laugh now because it's years on, because we're gonna get to some really rough parts. So pace yourselves, everybody watching. So you tell us a bit about the actual arrest, how that went down, because that was quite frightening.
Yeah, May 16th, 2002. It's like bam, 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 bam. Look through the peephole, it's blacked out. And then I go to the bedroom and speak to my girlfriend. All right, better let him in. Halfway through the living room, then just boom, door just flies off the hinges. Hands above your heads, get on the ground now, don't effing move. And you drop very fast because you think they're going to shoot you. And when I was down and cuffed, this detective just raises me back up and he's like, English Shaun, you're a big name from the rave scene. We finally got you. And he was my nemesis. I had no idea who he was till I read the police reports. He was sat next to me in Indian restaurants, eavesdropping on me, following me around all over the place. Yeah.
Oh, wanker. Wow. Oh, that's terrible. In law enforcement, there are those, and you can't blame them. They want to get the target. Let's get the target. Let's bring him down. But it's not like you were maiming and murdering people. And you had this really different etiquette of care to make sure that your ecstasy pills were a certain grade. I mean, how many people do you know now? I just heard about a friend in America just a couple of months ago. Her sister-in-law, the sister-in-law's boyfriend and two male friends, all three of them, they all were doing drugs, whatever they'd done, some kind of pill. And the two of the boys, men, started like going into convulsions and passing out. The third guy calls the ambulance. The ambulance gets there. They're all dead. They're all dead. These are men in their early 40s, and it was fentanyl over the border. There is this genocide in those drugs. I mean, you just don't know what you're taking these days.
It's part of the depopulation agenda.
100%. Thanks for saying that, because that's absolutely true. It's part of the Depop genociding that's happening in every single system on our planet. But let's focus on you. I just wanted to highlight the self-care that you took. You weren't in it for the malice, for the murder, you were in it for the good times, the money, and everyone to keep on raving. And that really was your objective, wasn't it?
Keeping the party going. I'm from Widnes, chemical manufacturing town. Rains a lot. Now I'm in a country where there's swimming pools in the backyard. Sun's always shining. They hear the English accent. They love the Brits. I've got my own counterculture that I've created. I've got a couple hundred people working for me. Got my own security team. Got investments in Rave clothing, music stores. Parties are getting bigger, up to 10,000 people at a time. Ego's getting bigger to the point where, it's as big as the Grand Canyon. And the drug scrambles your decision-making processes at this point because you've been on it for so long and you think you're behaving normally, but you surround yourself with equally crazy people who are reinforcing each other's insane behavior. And you're all going down this slippery slope together. And we were joking. We're above the law. We're never going to get caught. We're so smart. Because the drugs was telling us that. We're living like we're characters in a movie. This is like Pulp Fiction. The drugs was telling us that. But then May 16th, 2002, that was when I had to start to accept my karma, was when the SWAT team came.
Now let's move into that arena. So you've been arrested. It's a bit of a shock. You're convinced that you're going to get off because you didn't understand how statute of limitations doesn't run out, and you've got all this, 10 people coming forward with their testimony against you. When you were in the dock and you were sentenced, how did that feel?
So I'd been fighting my case for 26 months. Every month I was in court, and the prosecutor was portraying me to be the Antichrist, and my lawyer was portraying me to be this wonderful child protege, stock whiz kid gone wrong. And both were putting on a theatre show, and I never got to speak. And it's bizarre just hearing these people misrepresent your life, both sides, because the truth was something in the middle. So I was facing a maximum of 200 years. They put serious drug offender status on me. I had about a dozen charges my first year, and then they doubled it to 24 charges. They indicted my girlfriend because of a prescription pill found on the first day of the raid that didn't have a written prescription next to it, which is class 6 felony. She was visiting me 3 times a week. They indicted her a year later to stop her from visiting me. My bail was $750,000 in the beginning. I asked for a reduction. They doubled it to 1.5 million, which got me moved over to max security. So because we weren't cooperating, they pulled out all these dirty tricks to try and break us down. And even when I was at the sentencing hearing, and people had flown from all over the world, and when they got up there, and there was an argument then with the detective and the prosecutor and my lawyer, because the judge affirmed, the plea bargain, I'm going to give him 9.5 years. And there was a loophole in it. My lawyer had been referred to me by the New Mexican Mafia guys we'd associated with before we got arrested. And he was a loophole lawyer. And when the detective found this out at the sentencing hearing, he kicked off, and we thought the sentencing was going to get cancelled. And then the judge was like, prosecutor, lawyer, back in my chambers. And we're all just sat there now in the courtroom, sweating, thinking, oh my God, is this all about, we're going to start from scratch. Anyway, they came out and he reaffirmed the plea bargain, and getting sentenced to 9.5 years was one of the happiest days of my life, because I could see I was finally going to get my life back. When you're facing 200 years, your $1 million house on the mountain doesn't matter anymore. Your swimming pool, your jacuzzi, your twin turbo Mazda RX-7, all that stuff gets crushed out of you. And I credit being pushed to the brink of suicidal insanity to get rid of that. And even when they stopped my girlfriend from visiting me, and I lost her as well, and I went through the trauma, the attachment, the anxiety, I've got all the material things have been stripped from me. And now the woman I love has been stripped from me. I've got absolutely nothing. Felt like my head was going to explode. I'm crying in the jail because my girlfriend just broke up with me on the phone. I can't let them see me crying. I'm pretending to read a book, facing the wall. I'm down for days, depressed. And then I became so happy. I wrote to my sister, I feel like a mad monk in a cave because I'm not thinking about all the things I used to have that I was so attached to anymore. It's all been crushed out of me and severed from me. And the tension of thinking about all these things and grasping for them and wanting to maintain them. How much of my money can I still get? Can I still trade the stock market while I'm in prison? Can I do all this? Just finally just being able to release all that. The relief, the unanticipated relief.
Shaun, that is incredible. That's absolutely incredible. Thank you. That was a beautiful way to express, you know, being pushed to that ultimate limit of a human's journey where you've got no power whatsoever and everything is being ripped away from you.
And that's why the detective and the prosecutor were not wankers, really. They saved my life.
Yeah, that's great. Oh my goodness. Now I know that you're really invested and care very much about prison reform, and it's something that I know is in part of your mission in life, and I've really behind you and back you on that too, because it's just a horror. And landing absolutely insane sentences such as 200 years old, when the government and the politicians and all the higher ups that think they're higher ups, the pedophiles, the pedos, they get a couple of years and they trade between their mates. Not only do they trade kids and young girls and young boys, but they're trading sentences too. And yet they dare to throw away half the African American under 25 boy population. You know, that's another genocidal agenda that a young boy can go to prison for smoking weed. It's like, shut up and sit down. You know, all these things, they're not getting away with it. It's all being overhauled. It's all being looked at. You know, and you're a big voice in that. And I know that you're going to do more, you know, in your efforts to show what actually happens in prison, but, you know, for you in particular in the American prison. Talk to us a little bit about when you were first arrested, what was the cell environment like? And then take us to when you were actually sentenced and the difference there.
So I was in Sheriff Joe Pile's facilities from the arrest to the sentencing. I went from medium security Towers Jail over to the maximum security Madison Street Jail. The difference was there's two tiers of cells. They're designed for one person. In medium, they had three people in. In max, they had two people in, and they were cockroach infested. You got dead rats in the food. It's almost 50-degree heat, so your skin is melting off you. You got bleeding and itching, skin infections and bed sores. You're stinking like a wet dog. You're itchy, but you scratch yourself because you're sweating day after day. The outer layers of your skin are soggy, so clumps of your own skin detach under your nails. One of the hardest parts was just lying in the pool of sweat, just rotating at night, trying to get to sleep with the itchiness just keeping you awake all night long. The evening meal, we only got two meals. So evening meal, mystery meat slop called Red Death that occasionally had a dead rat in it. And the breakfast was mouldy bread and green bologna. We'd scratch the mould off the bread. If the bread was stale, we'd just put it in water and swirl it to get it down. So I lost about 2 stone from my arrest to the sentencing hearing. When I was in the court, my parents had like a concentration camp survivor.
God, awful. Awful. And what kind of people were you in the cell with?
So the people I was in cells with varied over the years, but it's all racially divided. So if you're white, it's the neo-Nazi Aryan Brotherhood prison gang decides who lives and dies. If you're black, it's the Mau Mau. Mexicans got the Mexican Mafia. The Chicanos have got their gang. They're the Mexican Americans. So everyone is racially separated. They've got
Mhm.
Hitler on them, swastikas. One neo-Nazi had a gas chamber with Jewish people dying inside the gas chamber and Hitler saluting over the gas chamber on his chest.
And how was he treated in the prison environment by the others?
So the more violence you commit and the more people you murder, the more tattoos you are awarded and the more respect and the higher up you get in the gang.
Mhm. Interesting. So you were in there for exactly how long? And was it the same prison after sentencing for the almost 6 years?
No, it wasn't. So I'm in Sheriff Joe Arpaio's jail facilities for the first 26 months. And then after sentencing, you go over to the Arizona Department of Corrections. In the prison system, everybody is sentenced, people are settled, people know each other. In the jail, which is unsentenced in America, that's what jail means, remand. It's all just people coming in and out. People are newly arrested. They don't know what the sentences are going to be. There's gangbangers who've got rivalry with these other gangbangers. And it's just helter-skelter, the difference between the two.
That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Did you get any of your sentence lessened for good behavior, etc.? Or
They don't do that.
that's a fallacy?
Arizona doesn't do that, Arizona State.
Well, they're very individual, aren't they, too? Because they don't change the time either. They don't have daylight savings. Their time stays the time, so there's something very independent about that state in particular. Okay. Was there anybody in particular that you befriended to protect you? And I know this is an awful part of it. I mean, what part isn't awful? But tell us how you stayed safe in the prison and also about the cockroaches.
Well, yeah, Wildman was arrested with me, and there was quite a big crew of us in the beginning. And then later on, when I got separated, then I was with a guy called Two Tonys, who was an Italian mafia Bonanno crime family associate who was serving 140 plus years for multiple homicides. He'd murdered rival gangsters. So at the top of the respect, old school mafia, don't harm women, don't harm kids. So when he took me under his wing, writing his book, it's called the Mafia Philosopher Two Tone. It's available on Amazon, as are all my 17 books. Once he took me under his wing, I never got any situations after that because he had the most respect.
Why do you think he had a respect for you in particular?
Well, what happened was my cellmate asked me to play chess with him, and I said, "Play chess with who? What's he in for? What's he doing? 140 plus years, multiple murders." I'm like, "Hold on a minute. Are you sure? What if I beat him?" And he just went and got him, and he looked like Uncle Junior when he was walking down the stairs. And at the end of the game of chess, I beat him quite fast. And I said to him, he said, how come you beat me so fast? And I said, because you kept speaking your moves throughout the game. And he slaps his head, he goes, "Oh, me and my big mouth." I didn't know it. He was testing me. And he said to stay alive on the road of life, he had to become a quick judge of character. And he liked me, and he thought I was an honest person. And would I be willing to write his life story? And I said, yeah, I would be honoured. And I'm sneaking in his cell every day. He's got prisoners watching for the guards. And that went on for months and months and months, to the point where when we said goodbye, when I was getting released, and he came to the fence, because I was in minimum by now, he's still in medium, he came to the fence, and he's saying, "I want to tell you, Shaun, all that time we spent together, I feel like you're the son that I never had." And I could see a tear start to run down his face. And he said, "I'm not very good at saying goodbyes. I'm just going to remember you. I'm going to remember this conversation, stay in touch." And then he just put his fist on his heart and went, "Eleanor, little bro, Eleanor, for love and respect." And then he turned around. That was the last I saw of him.
That's quite emotional for you.
Yeah.
Bless your heart.
He died in he died in 2010, but his spirit lives on in me.
Oh, lovely connection. Do you think he was a little bit like Wildman in not wanting to be a murderer, protecting people? Do you think that was part of his story?
So, you asked about if Wildman had been brutalized as a kid. He hadn't, other than, this situation with his brother. But Two Tonys, his parents used to tie him up and whip him and just really do horrific things to him. But he was self-educated in prison. He read so many books. He was like a natural philosopher. And one of his favorite books was A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. And if people were complaining where we were at breakfast cold, Ivan's in the Russian gulag, Siberia, they're working these people to death in the cold. And Two Tonys would laugh at the people complaining and say, "Look, where Ivan was housed, they were fighting over fish eyeballs in the soup. How can you complain? There's always somebody worse off." And when I say the spirit of him lives on in me, it was like the life lessons that he taught me, because What I've learned is there's good and bad in everybody. Yeah, he took people's lives. He was ex-military. More than half my friends in prison were ex-military. And their attitude is, if you're in the gangster lifestyle, it's just like being in the military. You're signing up to kill or be killed. If you violate our code, I could come and kill you. If I violate the code, my friend could come and kill me. That's the way they viewed it. So I'm not condoning, murder here. But what I'm saying is there's good and bad in everybody. And he had a very protective side that came out with me. And he taught me a lot of life lessons because I appreciate the small things because of him. And when you don't appreciate the small things, you go looking for trouble in the wrong places. And that was my downfall.
Wow, that's really special. Thank you for sharing. So, was Two Tonys the very first book that you wrote out of the 17 that you wrote?
No, no. Hard Time was my first one, which is my journey through Sheriff Joe's jail, because there was a lot of media interest in the jail, and I started a blog while I was in the jail, so I was documenting my journey through it, and a lot of the details in Hard Time. I was writing really long letters every day to my girlfriend, and even though we split and she moved on, she kept all those letters under her bed and FedExed them to me when I was released. And the details, I'm talking about, I'm trying to get to sleep, and the guy on the bunk below me is snoring, and I can hear the noise of the shower just dripping, dripping, dripping. And then I'm writing down what the guard is announcing over this robotic intercom system. So all these details that are in my book, Hard Time, there's no way I could have ever remembered that stuff. So, it was a miracle that she kept all those letters.
A nice girl that wasn't bitter and angry and didn't want to destroy, anything that you'd obviously gone through. That's really great. So then obviously Tony
Yeah.
found out about this book but okay, so just going back to that book, and the fact that there was something in you that had to had to journal, was that part of your own mechanism? Because you got a really quick brain, like you're a smart guy, you think fast, you act fast, that's your natural kind of modus operandi, I suppose. Was writing and journaling a help for you? Did it settle you down? Did it create a discipline? Did it help you get through those times?
Yes to all the above. A catalyst was I asked the guard, how'd you get away with the dead rats in the food, cockroaches crawling over us at night time, guards murdering mentally ill and blind prisoners. People can Google Scott Norberg, Brian Crenshaw. These are all documented cases. The jail paid out millions. And the guard said to me, the world has got no idea what's going on in here, and the public doesn't give a shit about prisoners. So with a tiny little pencil sharpened on my door, I started to write everything down. And my aunt would visit me in maximum security, and she smuggled those blogs out of max security, typed them up, sent them to my parents in England, and that's how the blog started. And we called it John, Jon, John's Jail Journal. They're all up there timestamped if people want to read the documented entries. That's how the activism started. I never set out to be an activist. My first year in the jail, I was still pretty wild because even though I'd quit the importation, I was leaving my girlfriend at home on the weekends and going off partying with Wildman and getting high. I hadn't gone inside myself and addressed the root causes, my demons, as to why I got involved in drugs. So if I had got released in the first year, I probably would have gone back to the lifestyle. But second year, when I was facing 200 years and I was on the brink of killing myself, that pressure on my brain is what crushed that out of me. But simultaneously, I started to think about the needs of other people because the former me, English Sean, Bank of England, narcissistic, hedonistic, party person, just want to get high, addictive personality, adrenaline junkie, only thinking about getting high, getting my party friends high, wasn't thinking about the harm I caused society, harm I caused my parents. But now I'm in the jail and I'm surrounded by suffering. I was feeling so sorry for myself. I was contemplating unaliving. Then a guy limps into my cell, steel rod in his leg, and he's got hepatitis C, he's got stomach cancer, he's got syphilis. And I'm hearing his story, and his stomach cancer is so advanced, he's going to die within a couple of years in the jail. He's in pain. He's got a screw loose in his leg, in the steel in his leg, and they won't fix it. And he's in agony when he goes on the toilet, and he's going to die in there. And I'm like, oh my God, there's always somebody worse off. So I start to read the guy's legal paperwork. I did a class for the Mexicans, teaching them how to write letters home in Spanish because they couldn't write because they worked out in the countryside. The Nazis had a problem with that, but I had a crystal meth chemist cellmate who intervened, and I was allowed to keep helping the Mexicans. And then it came to writing the blog, and writing the blog, it began in about 2004, and my goal was just to expose what was going on, hopefully get conditions changed, for the benefit of people who would come into that place after me. The YouTube channel started in 2007, and doing those things put a brake on my ego, and it was good for my soul, and it set my life path in a completely new direction that I hadn't anticipated.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. That's so beautiful. Not to glamorize any of it, but it's such an empowering, litany of examples of the different types of people that end up in prison. And as you and I both know, people end up in prison who are innocent. They've smoked weed, oh dear, and there's lots of different reasons why. And that they don't put actual big criminals like, royalty, aristocrats, governments, senators, etc. I mean, it's just that they're the crime families, not to mention going into crime family arena. You've written two books, one on the crime family, the Bushes, and one on the Clinton family, crime family too, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've written a series of books deconstructing the war on drugs and mass incarceration. And that's what, it was doing that that led me over to this guy, George H.W. Bush, and the Clinton crime family, and how, you know, Clinton was providing the security for the drug drops that were coming in to Arkansas. The CIA chose Arkansas. They were financing this war in Nicaragua, Iran-Contra, arms going down the white powder coming in, and the drops, they chose Arkansas because they had the most corrupt governor, which was Bill Clinton. So Bill's providing the state security for the drops, and the CIA is bringing it in. Oliver North, Felix Rodriguez. This is under George H.W. Bush. They're all working together, and it was because Clinton played ball that I believe he was able to parlay that into getting the White House, because he played ball with the CIA and the Bush crime family. It's all the exact same thing. The spanner in the works was the Boys on the Tracks case. Linda Ives, God bless her. Two kids were found dead on railway tracks, side by side. What I believe, and what a lot of people believe, is they'd seen one of these drops, witnessed it, and they were killed and put on the tracks. Because when they examined them, the medical team that came, the blood wasn't fresh. And one of the boys' dads worked on the tracks and knew there's no way this could happen. Clinton's coroner, Fahmy Malek, said they'd smoked so much green, they'd gone into a trance and laid side by side on the train tracks. This is the guy who Bill Clinton's mom, when someone died at her workplace, came in and stepped up and protected Bill Clinton's mom. So Fahmy Malek, I mean, if people look at the rulings, someone could get shot in the head and he would say they drowned in a swimming pool. This is how bizarre his rulings were when it came to his work for the Clinton crime family. So it was from the prisons and the substances that just brought me into this world of political corruption, the transportation of young people, Jeffrey and his island, and going down these dark rabbit holes.
Yeah, which is where we are today in terms of every single system in the entire world is coming down, every single one. And then thank goodness people are finally seeing that every single system is connected and it's linked, largely because the people at the top are all involved in every single system. And they basically go around carving up our planet. You have this sector, you have this quadrant, you have this east, you have the west, you have this, run by a bunch of hoods, villains, all of them, including royal family, upper echelons, what we consider, the upper echelons, oh, do be quiet and sit down, you're all villains and you know it. There's obviously a percentage that aren't, but, I'm at a stage myself where we just got to call it as it is and call the people out, and they will stand for their crimes against humanity, as far as I'm concerned. And I know you feel a very similar way. And again, the work you're doing on your channel, it's really sad. The other day I watched, one of the victims of Diddy, Misha, kind of unravel. And I felt really terrible for her watching that, because there wasn't anybody there in her corner next to her any kind of therapy, advice, which is what this young girl needed. And it made me sad that there are people looking at someone like her who has been harmed as a little tiny baby girl. She's only known harm and physical abuse. She probably doesn't have, a long track record of being able to function in school because you can't when you're a traumatized child. And so at her age of 33, how is she expected to deal with global attention because she was put on tables and had food eaten off her at a Diddy party? It's really sad. But you and Ron did a great. Oh, and then Jaguar Wright jumped on as well, didn't she? And she was said the right thing to her. You need help. But so you're really taking world news, if you want to call it that. I mean, because who really cares about Diddy? No one. The boy's in prison. He's not coming out. He's going to be done for murder, blah, blah, blah. But the victims, the fallout, they do matter. And the care they get and the guidance they get, that does matter. And what you're doing is you're shining a light on all of it, Shaun. You are. I'm yelling to Patrick Bet Davis, Joe Rogan, Piers Morgan, Sean Ryan. I'm going, oi, over here. We told you a fleet of spacecraft were coming. They're working with the American military who are also involved in all the systems, and you guys are ignoring me. Why? Knock it off. I'm not stopping, obviously, as I told you earlier. But again, everything is connected. And just to mention a couple more people too, you had on recently Beverly Rhodes on your channel, who's now got her own show with Ron. I don't know Ron's other name. What's his name? Your colleague Ron?
Swanson.
Ron Swanson. Hi, Ron. So they had me on their channel, that part of your podcast last week, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful. But someone like Beverly as well is a massive global threat in some regards because she's finding missing children, and Beverly has an ability to go down the timeline and read a cold case. So again, it's that saying, beware your sins, will find you out because we're coming for all of them, and it's not stopping. Now, tell us a little bit more about your the books that you've written and the work that you're doing, and share with us what would you like to see happen, in the world at the current time. What are your hopes and desires?
Well, it's like you said about Diddy, is that the main thing in the world right now? It certainly is not. We can use Diddy to get attention to survivors and the mission that we're on. But the main thing for me is World War. When I was reading in prison, I read a lot of history and stuff, and I was writing home back in 2006, 2007 about exactly what's happening right now, whereby we've got this blood sacrifice, this mass murder of people, our so-called leaders. We all want peace, but they get their rocks off by bombing the poorest countries in the world and just calling it collateral damage, which is absolutely disgusting. There are horrible things going on right now, but look at what happened when they went into Iraq based on, well, Saddam's got weapons of mass destruction, absolute BS. Over 1 million people died quite quickly, more than half of them women or kids. And the war on terror has killed over 5 million people, more than half of them women and kids. And it's like, we just accept this as if it's normal. The CIA could just go in, overthrow the government of Ukraine, blood sacrifice hundreds of thousands of people. Boris Johnson can scupper the peace deal, more hundreds of thousands of people die. And these people sleep at nights and relish the billions they're trading in contracts to the military industrial complex, Raytheon. I suspect that some of these defense contractors are single-handedly writing these government policies and telling them what to say. My wake-up call was 9/11. I was trading options. I was an options manager. I had the license for it. So it's something that I've studied and traded my entire life. And there's average daily volumes on options. And in the week before 9/11, the options that were betting that the airlines were going to go down went from like X contracts a day to Y to Z to just off the bloody scale. And I even saw the news headline, this has to be insider terrorist trading. We're going to track these trades down and find out who this is and get to the bottom of it. This is what the American newsreader said. And it completely disappeared out of the news because it was traced to a bank run by ex-CIA. And not only did they know it, 9/11 was coming, they profited from it. So these people who've got the power and the politician stuffed corpse, rubber stamp, pathetic, psychopathic, narcissistic, just soulless entities. Actually, they're demonic, working for the higher demonic realm. These people, they say everything they want us to hear to get voted. And then when they get in, they do the complete opposite. And the amount of blood on their hands, that's the biggest issue of the day, because what could be more precious than human life? And they're just saying, okay, bomb the crap out of that country. We don't care how many millions of people die. Just do it. We'll make billions in the process because we love the philosophy of Henry Kissinger and Zygmunt Brzezinski. We're just going to keep going around the world, overthrowing democratically elected governments. And the banksters come in then, the vulture funds, the capitalists. That's what they did. They divided Ukraine up.
Yeah.
They said, we're going to snatch Ukraine. We're going to make billions from it. And if Russia makes a move against us, we're going to sign on the biggest mafia in the world, America. And we're going to kick down to that big mafia through Burisma, through the Biden crime family. And these guys will protect us all day long. And when it looks like it's going to crap, Boris Johnson flies out. We've got your back. Keep it going. Keep sacrificing your young people, dragging them to the front line, to the meat grinder. I mean, what could be more important than raising awareness about murder, the sacrifice of young people that these psychos that are working for the demonic realm are perpetuating and accelerating as we speak, since they saw Trump was getting in all over the world now. They're back in Syria. They're paying, the ISIS that was created by Obama. They've got those guys back in action, trying to throw out Assad again. So it is a huge time spiritually, because there's a battle going on right now, and the warfare, the blood sacrificed, they're just trying to accelerate all over the world ahead of Trump getting in to multiply his woes, and whether Trump's going to follow through and de-escalate things remains to be seen. Because in my experience, there's a reason I don't vote. I just view all people at the top as psychos. That's how they got there, using these psychopathic techniques. And voting is an illusion of choice. And I'm hopeful that Trump will come in and follow through. But a side of me, I've just seen over and over again how people have said one thing and then they've got in and done the opposite. But I am hopeful that, the freedom of speech stuff is already looking good with Elon. That's helping me with my job security, for example. Yeah.
You touched on some brilliant points there, of course, and all very valuable and worthy. And we want everyone watching to also take note and think, just think away from the Diddy boy, or Ben Affleck and J-Lo getting divorced. And who gives an actual shit? Anyway, God. But again, it's the programming. We're all programmed, we're all groomed. This is what matters. This is what's important. Let's all talk about it. Let's not look over here. Let's not go over here. Look at what really matters. Like you said, the genociding, the fact that these people worship Satan and we're in a spiritual war, as you said, and it's the coming down of them all. That Biden boy, little nut job, he just let his son off, the drug addict. But what that does, even though it's a despicable act, in my opinion, a despicable act, because he said he wouldn't, but he can't remember where his left hand is at the moment anyway, so we can't really rely on him to make a decision. But what that does is, once that line is crossed, now when Trump comes in, then he'll be at ability to release the January 6th people who are in prison, for example, because again, lies, all of them. As far as I'm concerned, don't tell me who you are, show me who you are by your actions. And I remember when that January 6th was live on Facebook, there was a guy there that I would watch on Facebook, Andrew Poper, and he's got his phone on And he's like, we're at the doors. There's loads of us here. Look how peaceful it is. It was live on Facebook. Yet somewhere else in that building where, people were causing a riot. He's like, it's not us. All the Trump guys are here, and he's holding his phone up. It's just insane. It's crazy. The obsession for everyone to distort the truth. Everybody. Nobody cares what they say at the top. And then people's inability to think and take a step back and take a breath rather than plunge into a murderous rage. That doesn't help anything. Response to stimuli because they themselves haven't healed. They're damaged, their wounds are open. It only takes a word to trigger people. Again, trigger words, kill switches, all the programming that we have. Like, it's horrendous, isn't it? It's horrendous. Listen, I know we're running out of time, and you've got a baby who needs dinner, I'm sure.
Can you
Let's
hear him?
Yeah. Little Ziggy. He looks so beautiful. Big, healthy, bouncing boy. What more could you want, eh?
Do you want me to see if he's available to give you a
Oh,
wave?
yes. Yes.
Jen, is Ziggy available? Jen?
Uh,
Okay. Come on, Papa. Woo! Come and say hello to Dani. Who's that?
Hi,
Isn't it Dani?
baby. Hi,
He's
baby.
looking at you.
Hello.
Looking.
Hello.
At Dani.
Darling.
Look.
He's
He's
so
smiling at Dani.
cute,
Give Dani a wave. Give Dani a wave.
baby
Wave.
boy. He's so big now, isn't he? What is he, 15 months, 14, 15?
Yeah, he is. He's precious. And having a child, having a baby, and you hear these stories from the survivors, and it just makes you, how can people do these things to kids? And it just doubles your resolve, doesn't it, to shine a light on these monsters and try and campaign to get them incarcerated for longer.
Exactly. And change all the laws and the sentencing on smoking weed as opposed to harming a little one. Yeah.
It's
Who's
all upside down, isn't it? Isn't it,
looks
Bobby?
like
Ticky, 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 ticky. Ticky, 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 ticky. He's got quite a deep laugh. Oh, he's got a cold right now as well.
so adorable? My goodness me. Who do you think he looks more like at the moment between you and Jen and other?
Well, people say me, but they're saying he's developing more of Jen's features now as
No.
he gets older. In the beginning, they were saying it was me when he had no hair and his blue eyes. Say hi. Say hi.
So gorgeous.
Oh, no, he's waving. He's waving. 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 Yeah. Oh.
Ah. So do you think has it
Right,
changed
I best.
in any way, like having him the last year and a half? Has it changed? Because you've been
Of
through.
course, your life no longer exists. Everything is all about little boy, isn't it now? Isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah, but he's just a bundle of love, except when he's up at 4 in the morning.
That's
Come on,
hard.
Happy.
That is
Come
tough.
on.
Uh,
Right, I best go and help out. I've got my duties,
all right, darling. Thank
my
you so
fatherly
much.
duties.
So good to see you. So good to listen and share your story. It's so important. I'll make sure all the links are underneath.
Thank
Obviously, most
you.
people on the planet, or certainly in Britain, know what your podcast is all about. You're blowing up,
Yeah.
right? We'll do all the links. Thank you, Shaun Attwood. Lots of love to you and baby
Oh,
Ziggy.
thanks, Danny. Take care. Bye bye. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
Cheers. Bye
Bye
bye.
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 Bye, guys.
All right. We'll see you again then.
All right.
Cheers, Danny.
Love.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.